Oh, right, the hyoid bone. There's also a hyoid bone, which isn't officially part of the skull, but is often discussed at the same time.
The hyoid bone is a small horseshoe-shaped bone. It's located inferior to, or below, the mandible, and it's superior to the larynx, or voice box, in the anterior neck. Whew, that was a mouthful. The hyoid bone serves as a point of attachment for a bunch of neck and tongue muscles. It also acts as a movable base for the tongue.
The hyoid bone is a unique, almost sad bone. It's the only bone that doesn't connect directly with any other bone in the body.
Region 2, the vertebral column.
The vertebral column, or as it is known in dumb guy circles, the spine, consists of 26 different bones called vertebrae. The vertebrae are separated by pads of fibrous cartilage called intervertebral discs, which absorb pressure and allow for maximum flexibility. The vertebrae are held together and stabilized by types of connective tissue called ligaments and tendons. Ligaments attach bones to bones, and tendons attach bones to muscles. But don't worry, we'll elaborate on tendons and ligaments in a bit. The vertebral column houses and protects the spinal cord, another structure we'll give you the details on later.
And now, another amusing fact from the man with the anatomical plan, Slim Goodbody.
Did you know that the adult spine is 28 inches long, and if ripped out, can be played like a glockenspiel? Glockenspiels are fun!
The vertebral column is separated into 5 different divisions. They are the cervical division, the thoracic division, the lumbar division, the sacral division, and the coccygeal division.
The cervical division contains 7 small vertebrae which are located in the neck. The thoracic division contains 12 vertebrae which are located in the torso. These vertebrae articulate or connect with the ribs. The lumbar division contains 5 vertebrae which are located in the lower back.
To remember the number of vertebrae in these first 3 sections, think of the times most normal people eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 7 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m. Think of the cervical division as the breakfast division, with 7 vertebrae. The thoracic is lunch, with 12, and the lumbar is dinner, with 5 vertebrae. Pretty helpful, huh?
Okay, the sacral division, or the sacrum, contains 5 vertebrae. These vertebrae are fused or melded together into one big vertebrae in adults. It's inferior to or below the lumbar vertebrae. The coccyx, located inferior to the sacrum, contains 3 fused vertebrae. It is sometimes called the tailbone.
The vertebral column also contains 4 curvatures, which give it an S shape and a super spring-like flexibility.
The top curvature in the vertebral column is called the cervical curvature. This curvature is concave posteriorly, meaning it caves inward like a spoon. It is located in what we call the neck. The thoracic curvature is convex posteriorly, meaning it bulges outward like an eyeglass lens. This curvature is located in the upper backbone. The lumbar curvature is also concave posteriorly, but this curve isn't formed until we begin to walk upright. This curvature marks the lower backbone. And finally, the sacral curvature is convex posteriorly.
These curvatures give our spines an attractive S shape that men and women adore both at home and abroad. But as with all things good, curvatures have a downside, namely curvature abnormalities.
Curvature abnormalities can be blamed on any number of factors. Some are congenital, which means they were present before birth. Some are even caused by bad posture. There are few common curvature abnormalities, like scoliosis, kyphosis, and lordosis.
Scoliosis, for instance, is an abnormal curvature that usually occurs in the thoracic region of the spine. That's the second region that forms the upper backbone. For some unknown reason, scoliosis is more common in girls and can sometimes be caused by having lower limbs of unequal length. Scoliosis can sometimes be treated surgically or with a body brace. Kyphosis is an extreme thoracic curvature, creating a condition known as hunchback and inspiring lackluster animated films. You can get this disease from rickets and tuberculosis of the spine. Lordosis is an extreme lumbar curvature and is commonly referred to as swayback. Lordosis sometimes affects pregnant women and individuals with potbellies. This is because people with potbellies have a tendency to thrust their abdomens forward.
Well, that's the vertebral column and all of its trappings. We've also discussed the skull. That leads us to the final part of the axial skeleton, the bony thorax. Now, the bony thorax may sound like a mythological...
I am the bony thorax. Beware the vengeance of the false ribs. You must
You're
go
not the bony thorax. You're just a guy in a cloak.
Am I? Or is your mind numb with fear?
Well, don't I feel foolish?
Region 3, the bony thorax.
The bony thorax, or the thoracic rib cage, protects the heart and the lungs. It serves as a point of attachment for the neck, head, back, chest, and shoulder muscles. The bony thorax is made up of 3 parts. They are the 12 thoracic vertebrae, the sternum, and the ribs.
The thoracic vertebrae form the posterior midline of the rib cage. That means they divide the rib cage in half from the backside. The sternum, or the breastbone, forms the anterior midline of the cage. It's easy to find the sternum. It's the hard plate right in the middle of your chest. And finally, the ribs are 12 paired flat bones that form the lateral or side bars of the cage. That means altogether there's 24 ribs. The ribs are all directly attached to the thoracic vertebrae, but not the sternum.
The first 7 ribs are called the true ribs. The true ribs are attached anteriorly to the sternum by hyaline cartilage, a special type of cartilage, and they are, of course, as stalwart and honest as Abe Lincoln. The last 5 ribs are known as false ribs. The false ribs are indirectly attached to the sternum by cartilage located directly above them. They are also as wily and dishonest as the pickpockets from the musical Oliver. The last 2 false ribs are sometimes called floating ribs because they have no attachment, physical or emotional, to the sternum. Instead, they are attached to muscles in the lateral wall of the body.
And remember, the ribs are paired bones, so there's 24 altogether.
Well, that about sums it up for all 3 parts of the axial skeleton: the skull, vertebral column, and the bony thorax. And if you can't remember all the names and characteristics of the bones we've discussed, feel free to fail your test. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Feel free to rewind the tape and review at your own pace.